Welcome to Lawsuits and Lessons. We are back, and I want to tell you, follow us on YouTube, go to Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff, and subscribe to us. And I'm here with the man with a plan. You know, this guy knows his stuff. I'm happy to host with him. He's the main host. I'm just a co-host. He's the main host, and it's John Fagerholm. Hey, John.
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for that great introduction. It's always great to hang out with you. I wish we were doing it in person.
I know. I got to tell you, I once a month I have this networking event called Cocktails with Cooper, and I get like 50 to 80 people of business-minded people. And my friend Stacy Lindeman, who owns a company called A6 FinBiz, listens to the show. And she was a paralegal getting out of college. Now she owns a business, and she says your insight and your expertise is so helpful to her. She said she wasn't sure what she would expect, but she's like, it's really good. So I want to thank you from her because she likes our banner, but she didn't say anything about me. But she said, I really like that guy, John. So I just want to give you that compliment because it shows people are listening and you're making a difference because people watch the show and listen to the show to hear about the law and hear about lessons they can have and lawsuits. So it's something great. It's some great jive out.
Well, tell her I appreciate it. And next time I'm in the Philly tri-state area, I think you call it, Coop, we'll have to invite her out.
All right. Sounds good. So we have a great show. You know, that's one thing, John, you know so many entrepreneurs and you're always great at getting guests. And tonight is no different. Why don't you tell us a little about our guests and then why don't you bring them on?
Alexander Wilson is our guest. He's a longtime entrepreneur. We have several businesses together. We talk several times a week. I don't get to see him enough, but whenever I do see him, it's usually at the Soho House because he's a lifelong member of the Soho House. And he's tried to pull some strings to get me a membership, but they just don't want lawyers. So they keep saying no.
I was at the Soho House once. It was a rap for some girls, one woman show. Very cool place. I saw Kevin Nealon from SNL. So you're a member there. That's awesome, man. So John, you got a heavy hitter here today.
So Alex, even though we've known each other a long time, because we're doing business together and you know, we met in LA, but I don't really know your background. I know you're from New York. I knew you grew up as a private school kid and you have a lot of connections from that. But tell us about your background.
Yeah, I grew up in New York. But I'd say early into my teens, my parents split up. And so where I'd initially grown up in Park Slope, Brooklyn, now became a much expanded world that included Tribeca and Upper West Side when my mom moved out to Manhattan. And so I ended up matriculating into private school. And I was at Dalton for a couple of years and then York Preparatory School, both on the Upper East Side. From my junior and senior year. And that's when like the world of kind of possibilities just sort of opened up. All of my classmates were either the sons or daughters of, Victoria's Secret CEO and chairman, or there was a landmark diner and grocery store called Zabar's that everybody went to on the Upper West Side. It's legendary. And then, all the way down to someone like a Liv Tyler as well, right? So it was a nice cross section of, actress, agent, publicist, hotelier, scientist, all kind of in this cross section of Upper East Side, private school. I guess you'd call it privilege, right? And so me not coming from that world, it was just amazing to kind of rub shoulders and elbows with all these kids and their families. And it prompts you and motivates you to just want to do more. Basically, Chippendales is where it all started, right? And for those who don't know, Chippendales was a male review club in Midtown I believe it was on the West Side. And during the weeknights, it was, it's where a lot of people went, for that kind of fun. But on the weekends, for some reason, it wasn't being utilized. And so the owner approached a mutual friend of mine and of ours about, is there something that we can do to get, some people in here to spend money and what have you? And I got some of my friends together and we basically started an ongoing series of private parties and events that happened there. And it was basically like a who's who of, I guess, upwardly mobile, affluent, teens and 20 somethings all under one roof. And that's where a lot of networking happened. So, all types of opportunities, legal and illegal, were being sparked on those dance floors.
And, Alex, I had known him probably close to a decade before you got a driver's license. I guess that's part of being a New Yorker. But what made you come out to LA?
So after that sort of like window of time that I just described, we got tapped by another mutual friend of ours who was just coming off of being kind of like the it promoter in New York City. Like they ran all the top nightclubs. They did all the birthday parties for celebrities and celebrity kids, but they were just now aging out of it and didn't want to do it anymore. And we were the right age, like the same group of friends. And so we started off with a Tuesday and a Friday night at this nightclub called Life in Bleecker Street of Manhattan. And then it sprung out to La 61, another, sort of well-recognized watering hole in Chelsea that was owned by a female nightlife impresario or impresarius, I should say, Amy Sacco, and then who then went on to do Bungalow 8 and a number of other things. And that we had a regular night there as well too for about 2.5 years, and that's where things went to the next level again, where pretty much every celebrity you could think of was rolling into that spot on Monday nights, and then also the other location called Life on Fridays. So everybody from Leonardo DiCaprio to Kate Moss, Ed Burns, Robert De Niro, you name it. Fast forward another year, there was a location in East Hampton and one in Watermill that were about to go out of business. And we were there one of the weekends with, these clients, as we like to call them. And the opportunity to kind of go in there with a little bit of money and transform it became apparent and available. And so that's what we did. So it went from it being like a dilapidated, rundown, like converted barn to 3 months later being a location where we had, 200 people inside and 1,500 people outside trying to get in. And so we were doing everything from after parties and, marketing company launches for people like Sean Diddy Combs to, birthday parties for Gwyneth Paltrow and some of her friends. After all of that, we had a couple of screenwriters and showrunners from California that just happened to be at some of our events, and they had just started to come up with like the beginnings of an idea of like a television show and a film that was based on that scene. And they approached myself and my partners at the time about being sort of like consultants for these projects, TV, film, reality show. They flew us out to California to meet with like the top execs at MTV and Paramount and Fox, the whole thing. And so I was here for so long, I figured I might as well just stay here. And then that's when I, found a place to live. And just for the next, I would say about a year and a half, 2 years, it was just nonstop meetings for everything you could think of. That was the beginnings of why and when I came out here.
Alex and I have done a lot of business together, but he has a separate business that he's working on. Is that something you want to talk about, Alex? Here, Alex is a big basketball trainer and does all this stuff with a lot of these sports leagues and a lot of the clothing brands that are involved with these sports leagues. But I'll let you talk about what you're working on separately outside of me.
Yeah, I mean, so back to the entertainment stuff, right as the segue. So then it went from me doing that, where I set up a bunch of TV shows and film projects. I was a writer on a couple, to then having a lot of the kids of those producers and other talent that I was working with being in the sports world, and just getting into basketball, boys and girls. And at the time, I was training my son and coaching his teams, and he was tired of me being his coach. He didn't want to make it seem like I was giving favoritism to him over some of his teammates. And so I stopped coaching his teams. And literally at the same time that happened, this whole world of girls basketball just kind of like bumped into us, where they saw what I was doing with him. They asked if I could do the same with a bunch of girls. And I said, well, I'm going to coach and train them, not as girls, but as basketball players. So if you guys are fine with that, we can proceed. And then they were. And it went from 5 local kids at a rec center to now, I mean, we have close to 250 kids across, what I like to call the Havoc region, which is Hawaii, Arizona, Nevada or Vegas, Oregon, and California. And so it makes up the border state region of for the West Coast of a Nike sponsored, I guess you would call it league called EYBL, which stands for Elite Youth Basketball League. So there's representation across the country from I would say 34 of the 50 some odd states, and California is definitely one of the hotbeds. So what I've been doing there is, we pride ourselves on really, creating opportunities for at-risk kids all the way up to the affluent. If they're interested in basketball and taking it to the next level, whether that be, elite level high school, college, WNBA, they've come through our gym at some point, and 4 times out of the year we're competing against all the other top programs that Nike sponsors as well too.
Now, do you think that your background in club promoting and generating a buzz and getting people to come to your club has helped you with this business? Because you are doing the same thing. You have to generate clients, and it's whether it's a club or it's a basketball school. Do you think your past experience in that has really added to this, or has it maybe deterred because you were going for a different crowd back then?
I think it's only added, right? Because the same, I guess, acumen and relationships that I would reach out to in putting together like a big red carpet event at one of our locations where, the clientele, the location, the sponsors, the media, like the marketing that follows the event to make sure that everyone knew that it happened. All those same things happen within the sports world, especially the youth and amateur sports world, right? So especially now with social media and NIL being so prevalent, I mean, it's the number one thing that all the families talk about as a reason why they would entrust their kids with us, is because in addition to them getting, all this elite level basketball training, they want to know that the kids are going to be seen, right? Like, so now I would say when we're participating on that Nike circuit, we've got anywhere from, 25 to 30 college scouts, watching the games, but especially for the 15U through 17U kids.
Alex, we're going to move on to the section of the show where we talk about law and different things like that. Being a New Yorker and being a business person and an entrepreneur, what do you think of the election of Mandami in New York City?
It's a city full of obviously serial entrepreneurs and, innovative thinkers, mavericks, all that kind of good stuff. So I'm always for like the unconventional choice when it comes to, I guess, politics, if you will, right? And seeing what people can do with their own relationships, right? Like, and how that they can bring that to the forum, and maybe it expands, some horizons, some provocative thoughts to get certain things done that the people of the city need. So I don't have a 100% firm opinion yet on things until I see more. But I'm excited just about the near, and to see what the possibilities are.
Well, John, let me ask you, it's a big thing, you're in business law, and the big thing about Mandami is they say he's a socialist. Now, a lot of us, and I'll be honest, don't know what that really means and how it pertains to business. Can you enlighten us in that? Because you are a business lawyer, you probably are versed on this. So explain how socialism, what it is, and how it pertains to a business, and what maybe snafus people may run into.
Well, I'm not a political science major, so I'm not well versed in socialism, in those aspects. But what it generally means is that part of the means of production is controlled by the government, right? So my opinion always is more government, less freedom, less entrepreneurs, bad for business, right? So those people that think socialism is good, just look at any socialist country, right? And you'll see that um, that anywhere that the government controls, it doesn't work out too well for the people, right? And obviously, we have small bits of socialism in our capitalist country. For example, the post office. That's a good example of something that is predominantly controlled by the government, right? But of course, we have competitors to the post office, UPS, FedEx, a bunch of them, right? So it doesn't take a genius to look at the post office and look at a FedEx and go, well, wait a minute, FedEx is better, right? Now, obviously, the post office is cheaper, but it's cheaper because it's funded by the government, right? So you might get something cheaper, but you're not going to get something good. So my thoughts on it are, I really like the way the guy speaks. He's passionate. He seems intelligent. But how do you fulfill a promise of uh, free everything? Because nothing is free. Somebody has to pay for it, right? And what he's saying is, well, the wealthy are going to pay for it, but the wealthy have something to say about that. In some countries, they don't, right? Somebody in Venezuela may not be able to leave very easily, but someone in New York City can leave just as easily as Alex left because he thought California gave better opportunities, right? So those are my thoughts. I haven't seen it work anywhere. It doesn't mean that it can't somewhere, but it'll be an interesting experiment to look to see how many businesses, big business, right? Because the small businesses may not have a choice. If you own a little bodega, somewhere in Harlem, you may not have the choice to move to Texas, which is business friendly, right? But if you own company that's the largest investment house in New York, but they opened up their second largest office in Dallas, and they're already talking about moving all their people to Dallas, right? Or the rest of the people that they have in Dallas. So if you don't have that base of employment, and it's not just about taxing uh, the businesses, right? Because that's a certain amount of it, but it's the tax that you get from the employment base. Well, if you don't have that employment base, how do you then give all those free things that you've promised? So I don't know that he's going to be able to accomplish free stuff without some form of capitalism that raises the money for it, because there just isn't a way to give free stuff without taking from somebody else. And people in New York have options. People that you can take from have options. So that's my thoughts.
Well, I can't see a bodega in Texas. I mean, it'd be about to sell like beef jerky and cowboy hats. It's like you don't just walk on the street. Oh, look. But the thing is, okay, so Alex, you're from New York, and you grew up and you were around the wealthier people. And New York government says right now New York is so overpriced. So maybe that this guy comes in and the prices somehow go down. I think for young entrepreneurs, I think it could be something refreshing because you want to be in this city. You want to be like you were in a think tank. You learn so much from these people, and their parents, everyone they had an effect on you. So I think that's one good thing. If the prices come down, if all the rich people leave and the apartments go, not the real, I mean, if the apartment prices go down or something like that, I think it become more of a cultivating new talent per se, because I think a lot of times people can't afford New York and everyone wants to be there.
I agree. I mean, and where I grew up in Park Slope, essentially parts of it were like Upper West Side. But then if you walk 2 blocks, east, there's projects are right there as well too, right? And so I kind of, growing up, was always straddling the line between my friends on this side and my friends on this side of the tracks as well. And going back to New York during COVID, I saw that a lot of those project buildings have now been taken over by private sector, and probably with some involvement through the government, and now they're turning them into low income housing, or affordable housing, I should say, right? And I'm sure that's through some initiatives that are affiliated with the state in terms of making things just housing and rent control and all these different things accessible for a lot of the people. Like, to John's point, just trying to, maybe not free, but bringing it down to a way more manageable cost, like in terms of still being able to have that New York lifestyle, but on a budget.
Socialism is antithetical to entrepreneurship. It just takes away the incentive for anyone to be an entrepreneur. And Steve, you talked about those rents going down, right? But if I'm the owner of a brownstone in Brooklyn, and I can get, I don't know, 5,000 a month for it, why would I bring my rent down? Right? So the only way that they can enforce anything like that is to take it from me. So if I know that my property is not safe, why would I build anything? There's no point in doing it. And he's just talking about rent controls anyway. He's not talking about bringing the price down. He's talking about that those prices aren't going to go back up. But it turns out rent control doesn't work either, right? So there's a very good friend of mine that I grown up with that's done very well for himself. He has a rent controlled apartment in Venice on a very nice street. Doesn't pay very much for it. But guess what? His house in Seattle is fantastic. And he spends time between those two places, and he's never going to get that apartment up. Now, he started paying for that apartment when he moved to LA 20 something years ago, right? So the rent hasn't gone up. And the funny thing about Mandami is he also has a rent controlled apartment, but he's from a wealthy family. So you're never going to give those apartments up anyway. So creating rent control to keep prices down, that just benefits those people that have been there the longest. And in New York, since you can transfer that rent control to your heirs, I don't even know how that law works, but there's generations of people, wealthy or not, that have been in these rent controlled apartments. The only thing that works is free market. That's the only thing. And just name the wealthiest country and you'll see free market. You're not going to see socialism. You're going to see capitalism. Now, capitalism has its problems too, but most of that is crony capitalism, where you do favors and you're taking bribes, and sure. So you should be focusing on that, not focusing on some other system that we know doesn't work. And a lot of times socialism leads to communism. Now we know that doesn't work, right? Because communism is really just when you look at the Communist Manifesto, that's just a critique on capitalism. It just tells you what's bad about capitalism. It doesn't try to solve a problem or give you a different way that's a better way. And in fact, you could just look at China, Russia, any of those places. The key point of communism is do what you can do, as much as you can do, and take as much as you need. Well, human beings are imperfect. They're going to do less and take more. So guess what happened in China? They made those promises, and then when it didn't work because people took more than they gave back, they had to start killing people. They had to start saying, well, you're an invalid. You can't work. So let's get rid of all the invalids. And once they killed all the invalids, all right, now we have enough resources again. But then as time goes by, okay, we don't have resources anymore. So who's next? All right, let's kill the homosexuals, right? So that's my problem with it. And the country I come from, it's not a capitalist country. It's gone through several different iterations. Now it's more of a dictatorship, but that's really what communism anyway. It's a group that's dictating what everyone else does, and nobody has choice. Whenever a system takes choice out of it, you're not going to get anything good.
Well, I'm blind in one eye. So if I move to China, will they kill me and say I'm an invalid?
It depends on if you're productive or not. The difference in socialism and communism, at least in socialism, you have some choice, right? So the government takes some of the means of production, but not all of it. So there's still some choice, right? But the ones that produce are required to pay for the ones that don't produce, right? Whereas in communism, you don't get a choice. They go, hey, Steve, we think you'd be a great marksman. I hope that one good eye works, right? And you have to be a marksman. I know you want to have a basketball business, Alex, but we think you'd be a better chef. So you're a chef. No choice, right? So really, it all just comes down to what system gives you choice. And the systems that give you the most choice end up being the most productive systems. So think about the difference between California and Texas, right? So California, less choice, more regulation, more lawsuits, more taxes. Guess where all the entrepreneurs are moving? Texas, which has zero income tax, less regulation, and not as many lawsuits.
We use the term entrepreneur a lot, and and how you said socialism doesn't help it. But Alex, to you, because you're an entrepreneur, what is your definition of an entrepreneur? Because I always, you meet so many people who say they're entrepreneurs, and it's like, I go to so many networking events, I throw networking events. I don't even know what some of these people do. They say they're an entrepreneur. I have no idea what their job is. I've known them for 2 years. I'm like, what the hell do you do? I'm like, they coach dogs on their social behavior, shit like that. But to you, because you both are entrepreneurs, but and I've talked to John about this before, but to you, Alex, what defines an entrepreneur to you?
I think to me, it's once you've chosen either the profession, the project, like whatever it is that you're it's almost like you're taking it from scratch, idea to fruition, basically. And in doing so, you're incorporating best practices, you're incorporating relationships, you're incorporating like long time, friends and colleagues that maybe, you know, really didn't have value in what you were doing business wise until that point, and you're turning it all into this like really cool stew that becomes like your business, right? Your brand, your product, and I think the entrepreneurial spirit is about like more the journey of like taking that thing from 0 to 100, and if successful, just being able to continue to do that over and over and over, which is where I guess the term serial entrepreneur comes into play, is because you kind of almost get off on the idea of like, if I can think it, I can create it, I can do it, and then I can do it again, basically. And so, obviously the best entrepreneurs are the ones that, I would say, are the most successful.
Who's the best entrepreneur you've been around, Alex?
The best that I've been around?
Besides me, of course.
Well, I mean, I have favorites, right? Like in terms of people that we've collaborated with or we worked with. So, like just in terms of sheer, um, volume and that sort of a thing. Obviously, like an Elon Musk, who I've been around before, would be somebody that's right there at the top of the list. I've been in the presence of Warren Buffett before as well too. Like he used to come to a lot of our events back in the day, and we ended up becoming pretty good friends with like the likes of Jay-Z and some others that he's had on his own, interview sessions, and I guess predating podcasts and so forth. In the music world, at the time, there were guys like Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin and some others that like had done really cool things. I would say on the hospitality side, Ian Schrager for sure. He came from the nightlife world as well too. Stewie 54 days, and then got into his, eponymous, hotel chain, and did really well for himself. And he incorporated a lot of what we did in events and nightlife into sort of the presentation, the visuals, the vibe of his hotels. And I learned a lot from him, in coming up, and then implemented a lot of that into my own stuff. So yeah, I mean, lots of different really cool entrepreneurs in different ways.
It's funny you mentioned Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin. To me, I don't look at them as much as entrepreneurs as I look at them as visionaries, because they saw something. And I think that's a visionary, sometimes different than an entrepreneur, because they both changed music and created a scene. And I think that's more than entrepreneurship. I mean, it's besides being pure genius, they were visionaries. And I think a visionary does have a somewhat of entrepreneurial, but I think visionaries stand above the rest.
100%, 100%.
And so, Alex, with your business, what's the next step? Where are you going?
The technology is what's making it like just something so incredible to be kind of like at this nexus and crossroads of now. Is so, in addition to just the pure sports training and development and the competitive aspect, like I mentioned once earlier, like there's the NIL side of things now, which is the name, image, and likeness deals. So we have now 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that are commanding 6 figures for their name, image, and likeness, just because they happen to be, camera ready and good basketball players, right? And then they graduate on to them becoming, nationally ranked and college recruited. And now the schools, who have their own NIL boards and booster clubs and what have you, get involved. And now they're coming after you for involvement from some of these players as well too. And I mean, for everything from a viral video, commercial, billboard, ambassadorship, to, going on global tours with other girls of the same ilk in promotion of new product launches and brands and what have you. But I would say not, but in addition to that, with the technology piece, it's more about like the scouting and verification of these particular athletes for some of the professional franchises. So we're working on a platform now called Crownsmith, which is going to be almost like the Deloitte and Touche, envelope, please, stamp of approval for the sports world. But it's going to involve like, crowdsourced video, that's AI enhanced that follows the player on their journey. It's going to involve fractionalization of some of their contracts. So, it'll include AI, blockchain, Web3 resources as part of that. And the other cool thing is now the sovereignty piece, where because of Bitcoin and a number of these other cryptocurrencies being in place, it's forced some of the technology visionaries, as Steve mentioned earlier, to like come up with ways where we can take back some of those resources and use them to our benefits now, right? To level the playing field. I would say the number one barrier for a lot of these kids participating in some of these more elevated events and opportunities is that some of them just don't have the means. And so if you can kind of now come up and create your own limited capsule collection of a clothing line, design your own, customized sneaker in collaboration with somebody, and now sell that via your own, I would say, blockchain AI enhanced kind of like little portal, a passport, as we call it. I mean, you can essentially fund your basketball career all the way up into your college days if done properly, right? And so, brands like Nike and Under Armour, New Balance, Puma, they're all like myself now trying to get into that space because they see the opportunities, the possibilities.
So how can we find out more about your company? Do you have a website, or how can people get in touch with you about your company?
What I mentioned before is top secret, so it's not for long, but it's something that we're developing now that people will hear about soon. But in terms of the academy and the segue from that into it, it's called Performance. They can log on to performancehawaii.com and get a sense of the academy, what we're doing. It's Hawaii founded, but as I mentioned before, we've got affiliates in all the border states. So California, Arizona, Oregon, and Nevada as well too.
Just out of curiosity, and I don't mean to change the subject, but I mean, this is kind of a lawsuit show for the most part. Remember that issue with that girl that struck that other girl? This happened a couple of years ago. Whatever happened to that girl? Is she okay? And I don't mean the one that got struck. I mean the one that was the actual aggressive one. Is she okay? Because I know she got a lot of backlash, and I mean, rightfully so. But for a 13-year-old to get that kind of international backlash.
Yeah, I just started this past weekend. She's doing completely fine, still playing basketball. She plays for, I believe it's Canyon View High School. I believe it's in like the Rancho Cucamonga area, but she's been completely fine. That situation was an ironic one because she's the daughter of a former NBA pro. Parents were split up. Like, she at the time had been going through a rough emotional kind of situation. And that situation of just kind of like lashing out at a kid during the game brought on so much media frenzy, right? Like, and at one point in a bad way, and then it ended up becoming in a good way. But I mean, I had everybody from TMZ to CBS News to Fox following me all over the place, trying to get me to comment on it. They were waiting for me at like the school that our practices were at. It was an important moment because literally at the same time that it happened for her, Jokic, the Joker who plays for the Denver Nuggets, he was literally involved in the exact same situation, but in the pros. So when all this backlash started to happen, and the news networks were approaching me about commenting, I said the only way I would comment is if you allowed me to talk about the situation in its entirety, because then I was gonna bring in the Jokic comparison, and as soon as I did, and CBS released it in its entirety on their newscast, all the sort of like craziness stopped.
And how about the other girl? Did she turn out okay? Because I mean, it was violent, but it wasn't life ending. And I know you called me because of lawsuits and things like that at the time that were potentially going to happen, but it turns out nobody sued anybody, right? From what I understand.
Well, they attempted to, right? Like, I guess because she was the offspring of former NBA player, the other side was thinking, oh, maybe this could be a situation we could, squeeze a little money out of them or whatever. She happened to be from, like I said, a divorced family, and the money wasn't as abundant as the other side thought it was going to be. And then eventually it just got, it got dropped and what have you. But it was something that I thought that should have happened right from the beginning. But, like there's opportunists and there's situations that come about sometimes, like once you realize where the other person is, from a litigious standpoint, right?
But to be fair, if someone attacked my child during a sporting event, I think I'd be pretty litigious myself, right? So from what I could tell from the video, the girl didn't do anything. I mean, she was playing basketball, right? So she was, just doing her part for her team. I didn't see anything that warranted that kind of violence, especially in that space.
Games are they're sort of stories of like the ups and downs, right? And so like in that particular game, that group was, I think, a seventh grade group of girls playing, and we were playing in a varsity high school division. And so that entire game, the girls for the other side were pinching her, pulling her jersey out of her shorts, pulling her shorts down. Like there was lots of things that were happening. Like they call it like, like big leaguing kids, right? And, if it was another high schooler, I think that kind of stuff would have rolled right off her, her back, her shoulder. She would have forgot about it. But I think, being an emotional seventh grader, it was, I think at the time it hit a critical point. And as she was on her way back, coming back after like a score or something, she tripped over somebody and she got up and she thought it was like intentional. And that was the reason for like the swing. Right. And so, yeah, it was like, it was an unfortunate situation. I think immediately after it happened, the two girls got up and I sat them down together and they were actually talking, right? Like they were as sort of colleagues in the sport. They were coming in, into common ground. They were realizing like why it happened. Apologies were had. I mean, the whole thing. It was like, and since then, there's been like way worse interactions that I've seen where like literally nothing has happened after. But I thought at the time it was as much it was like a story that I wish didn't happen. The fact that it did allowed for a conversation, right? Like then there were a lot of practices by event organizers that changed where, the refereeing became better, more the policing of things during the games for sportsmanship became better. So I think a situation like that would not even be close to happening like now, right? Like it wouldn't have been allowed to get to that point.
For the girl that attacked the other girl, uh, based on what you're doing and what you're planning and, the way they can make money, and is that reputation going to harm her from entering into that system where she could potentially benefit from her skill set?
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like there'll be brands that wouldn't want to be, like on board with with that kind of scenario. Like even though it was like in the past, what is that now, 4 years ago, right? Um, but then there are some that they're all about giving kids like like the second chance, which has happened, like I said, from high school to the college to the pros.
If Iverson hadn't been given a second chance, right?
There's tons of athletes that have that in the heat of battle. There's like that moment, and sometimes smarter heads don't prevail. But I think with given that second chance scenario, like I think you see the turnaround of a lot of kids. I mean, there couldn't be a sweeter kid than her. It was just an unfortunate like one-off kind of situation.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked out for everybody.
All right. Well, this has been very informative tonight. We learned a lot about basketball, socialism, bodegas in Texas. It's you learn a lot on the show, people, and you got to keep listening. You got to subscribe. If you have any questions, if you have any topics you want to talk to us about, you can email me at thecooptank@yahoo.com. You can also go to YouTube and watch my award-winning podcast, The Coop Tank, where I have a roundtable of local Philadelphia area business people. There's about 125 episodes up there. You can also go to coopertalk.net. I have over 1,050 episodes, and I've ever went from Stephen Van Zandt to Daryl DMC to Ed Asner. There's tons of great actors on there. John, how can people get in touch with you?
Defendmybiz.com. How about you, Alex? I know you already said, but you want to talk about Pro Performance before we sign off?
Yeah. Again, we're at performancehawaii.com. Like I said, a Nike sponsored EYBL girls basketball academy, and we're extending our reach out to the border states of Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, and now California as well too.
Okay, and John, take it away, man. You're wrapping it up, baby.
All right. Well, first, thank you, Alex. I appreciate you jumping on with us and giving us your time. I know we speak a few times a week, but it's good for the world to hear what you have to say and all the cool things that you're doing. So I really appreciate your time.
Keep listening till next time, and then listen to all the past episodes. And each week, listen. That's all I gotta say. Listen, because we like to hear from you people.
Awesome. I appreciate the opportunity, guys. It was great talking.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great night, people.